achieved.
For the first time in a couple of years, I'm coming off a Super Bowl night where I simply did not. I came up a little bit short. Like last year, I had New England in the under. Year before, I had Philadelphia in the over. And in both cases, we cashed in huge. This weekend, as you saw on my website, I had Kansas City in the over. 54 points. At the end of the night, the team's total for 51. We were victimized by a slow start. 10-10 at half, not exactly what we were looking for. I knew we still had a shot. For anyone who tailed me on that, I knew we still had a shot at halftime when it was 10-10. I thought Kansas City can get things rolling. I think San Francisco put up a better fight. And honestly, if you look at my breakdown, I did talk about, because I love the way Kansas City's defense was able to force San Francisco out of their normal habits and force them into a position they weren't comfortable with, put too much pressure on Garoppolo having to throw the ball consistently and be successful, and that's what led to their downfall. Kansas City got going. San Francisco could not keep up. Even when they had the lead, they weren't able to match them to the point where they could keep that lead and grind their way to victory. Now, I did talk about how Kansas City had averaged 31 some odd points over the last 10 games. They finished with 31 points, and I said they hit the over every time their opponents are able to score more than 20 points. Well, in this case, San Fran hits 20 right on. So if the defining moment was, I believe, at the end of the first half when I think it was Kittle took that big pass down the field and got called for offensive pass interference. It was. I think it was the right call. Unfortunately, it would have given San Francisco an opportunity to go up 13-10, and those additional 3 points would have put us in a position to win some big cash. Nonetheless, that's the way things go, and we have a whole year to recover for that. Welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions. As always, I am your host, Scott Johnson, and on this episode of the show, we are breaking in the upcoming UFC 247 event, which will host not one but two UFC title fights in the great state of Texas, Houston specifically. We will see John Jones putting his head on the line and Valentina Shevchenko defending her crown as well. I'll be giving you all 5 of my main card predictions on this episode of the show. All of my preliminary picks will be available at kamikazeoverdrive.net. If you're new to the channel, please like and subscribe to my videos and click that little indicator so you get a notification when I post videos. I post videos for every single event and have for the last 10 years. Now, I'm coming off an 8-4 UFC Fight Night 166 event, which we won some cash. Not a ton amount, but we certainly did some. You can see my results on my main page. So for my HBC, so my hardcore betting cluster, that makes 4 consecutive profitable nights, 5 in my last 6, and 6 in my last 8. That's pretty solid. For my CBC, it's a more casual betting cluster. You get both of these in the betting pack. I've alternated wins and losses over the last couple. Higher risk, higher reward. But if you go back to UFC Fight Night on UFC ESPN 7 or on ESPN 7, 158 units profits. That's pretty damn solid. So that covers a lot of the losses along the way. Now, you can buy the bet packs for $15. All the different styles are included in there with all the other things I break down and post for you. So make sure you check those out in the bet shop. We've got a lot of good fights. And before we get to them, make sure you subscribe to me on Twitter, KO_predictions. Follow me there. I'll do my best to post stuff as much as I possibly can. And on that note, let's get to our first main card prediction. Fight number 1 of the main card goes down in the UFC's heavyweight division. His former title challenger, 21-7-0 with 1 no contest. The Black Beast, Derrick Lewis, takes on the 15-6 Swedish Hercules, if you will. Former light heavyweight, Ilir Latifi, moving up a division. Now, Lewis is coming off a split decision win over Blagoy Ivanov, a fight I correctly predicted, which snapped his 2-fight losing streak, which were losses to Junior Dos Santos and Daniel Cormier, 2 of the better fighters in the division. For Latifi, he has lost back-to-back fights to Corey Anderson and Volkan Ozdemir, a potential future title challenger and a former title challenger. He had won 5 of 6 prior to that, with his only loss coming to the now Bellator heavyweight and light heavyweight champion Ryan Bader. And as I previously mentioned, Latifi is moving up to light heavyweight. He has fought there before outside of the UFC, but he spent all his fights in recent memory in the heavyweight division. Now, physically, Lewis 5 inches taller at 6'3" to 5'10" for Latifi. He'll have a 6-inch reach advantage. Lewis should be the heavier man. We don't know what Latifi will weigh in at. I would think Lewis would be 10 to 25 pounds heavier. And he's also, Derrick Lewis is the fighter is 2 years younger. And keep in mind, Derrick Lewis is fighting at home in Houston. He's from Texas, so he certainly will be the crowd fan favorite. He will certainly have people on their feet chanting for the Black Beast. Now, as I said, Latifi has fought at heavyweight before, but how does not cutting weight change his performance? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? How does fighting bigger men impact him as well? We'll talk about that. Now, when you look at Derrick Lewis, he's coming off a fight that he got a victory, a narrow split decision victory, but it's one of his rare non-top position wins. The majority of his wins have come via ground and pound from top position. Not all of them, but a lot of them. In that fight, he survived a couple of takedowns, a couple of bad spots against a very good grappler, judo black belt, and he had slightly more success on the feet, doing damage, a little more pressure, a little more volume, and edged it out. Lewis overall has big power. He's not a great striking technician. He's not a guy who's going to go out there and wow you with his jab and be impressive with his footwork and everything. He kind of plods forward. He likes to brawl and just throw big hands and hurt you and back you up and potentially get you in a position where he can finish you off. One thing with Lewis, he carries his power exceptionally deep into fights. He's very dangerous regardless of when the fight takes place, and he tends to prey on fighters that slow down. Guys that make it off to a fantastic start, they can't maintain it. Lewis's pressure and physicality just wears on them a little bit. Even muscling them around the cage makes it difficult, and before you know it, he's in position to get them out of there, even late in the third round. Even in a fight where he's lost 2 rounds, he's lost all of it. For example, in the Alexander Volkov fight, he's lost every exchange in that fight right up until the very end. Now, when you look at Ilir Latifi, he's a powerhouse in his own right. Physical strength, big punching power, and again, how will that translate at heavyweight? Now, I would think the size/length of Lewis could be an issue for a fighter that has had issues getting in a range against fighters at light heavyweight who are longer and taller, and Lewis is a big man. Latifi traditionally wins his fights one of two ways, either with a quick finish, whether it be a big power punch or some kind of choke, top position triangle choke, power guillotine, or he's able to slightly outwork a slower opponent, a guy who slows down and tires more than he does. When he's forced to go the distance, wrestling is a key aspect of his offense, and the big question is, can he take the bigger man and Derrick Lewis down? I don't know if he can or not. Lewis's takedown defense is not unstoppable. It's not uncrackable. But Latifi might be hard-pressed to take him down based on the size factor. Even if he does, it will cause Latifi's cardio to slow down, and Lewis is hard to keep, and he's able to will himself back to his feet very well, just kind of shut guys off, even bigger men than Latifi. Additionally, with Latifi carrying more weight at heavyweight, because he's not a big man in his own right, it might impact his cardio that much further. It might slow him down a little bit and really impact his overall performance. Overall, when you look at this, Latifi's best bet will most likely to land that big one-punch shot and take Lewis out of the equation very quickly before things get to unwind, or score a takedown and maybe get that top position submission, like a guillotine, an arm triangle, or a power guillotine if Lewis tries to get up and Latifi's able to latch onto his neck. More likely, Latifi struggles to find his way into range, kind of gets a little tentative, gets routinely backed up by the big swings of Lewis, sometimes getting hit, sometimes just getting forced backward, potentially gets cracked in that scenario, possibly along the cage with a big right hand. Eventually, they're going to tie up and grapple. Latifi's going to tire out, trying to muscle a bigger man around the cage. He'll force him, to the floor. Most likely, Lewis will force him to the floor. It won't be pretty. It won't be a beautiful double leg takedown. It'll just be kind of one of those, hey, I'm exhausted, you're exhausted, we're going to the ground, and Lewis winds up on top, countering into that position. And Latifi, his chin and durability are major question marks. I don't think they'll hold up very well at heavyweight once the fist starts flying. Once he gets cracked, he will eventually crumple under the pressure of the Black Beast, whether it be along the cage or on the mat. Lewis fighting at home will be a massive amount of motivation, and my prediction is Derrick Lewis to defeat Ilir Latifi by TKO. Moving right along, we have one of the more competitive matchups on the card. We are in the UFC's featherweight division as the 14th ranked Mirsad Bektic currently holding a record of 13-2, goes head-to-head with Dan 50K Ige with a current record of 11 wins and 2 defeats. Again, I never trust the UFC records. I go on their website. They often are not updated with the most recent fights. Nonetheless, Bektic's coming off a knockout loss to Josh Emmett that I correctly predicted. He's 2-2 over his last 4 after starting his UFC tenure with a strong 4-0 start. This is a very big fight for him. In the wake of his recent struggles, he's seen a number of prospects move past him or guys simply take opportunities that could have been his. For Ige, he has won 4 in a row since a loss in his debut. It was a tough loss, but a fun fight in that first outing. Impressive wins along the way, most recently taking out Kevin Aguilar in a fight that actually cost me a little bit of money. Physically, Bektic 1 inch taller, 1 inch reach advantage for Ige. They are the same age. Now for Bektic, again, he's really struggled with that step up in competition. He was stopped by Darren Elkins in a fight he looked exceptionally good in right up until the finish. He had a split decision win over Ricardo Lamas, a guy that most people have been getting out of there relatively quickly now, and then stopped by Josh Emmett. Again, he has struggled of late. When he fought Lamas, he fought him at close range. He melded together takedowns and short strikes. He really has not developed his range striking. It hasn't been where I've liked it. It just seems like he's just not quite comfortable on the outside. He was having a lot of trouble reaching Josh Emmett in that matchup, throwing a lot of single strikes and coming up short, or just not being as impactful as he needed to be. Overall, in his success, he's leaned heavily on his takedowns to score points. He averaged 3 takedowns per fight over his first 5 fights, taking down each one of his opponents at least once. He looked almost untouchable until the end of the Elkins fight, and he included landing takedowns in that matchup as well. He has landed just 2 completions over his last 3 matchups, both against Ricardo Lamas, both weren't hardly enough to get him a split decision. And even when he lands takedowns, his volume isn't great. His work rate from top position just isn't that damn impressive, even though he has this, again, he was considered a blue chip prospect. He's one of these individuals who has a reputation for mauling guys, but it's not always what he puts forth. We also have to have some major questions about his durability. His cardio seems to be a bit of an issue, as he will slow down, but his durability certainly, with Emmett taking him, he gassed hard against Elkins leading to the finish, and it looked like a jab that kind of put him on his ass against Emmett, and when Emmett started unloading big shots, and now don't get me wrong here, Emmett hits very hard, and when he hits you, you're in serious trouble. But Bektic just kind of seemed like he wanted out of there once he started getting tagged and didn't really know what to do, and I wouldn't either. But honestly, it just was not a good look for him. Now for Dan Ige, he's a jiu-jitsu black belt and a judo brown belt, which suggests that he has the tools to either force Bektic directly away from his wrestling or defend it altogether. Ige has 5 wins by submission overall, I believe just 1 in the UFC. Even if Bektic gets him down, Ige has the skills to make that ground game not an inviting spot to be in. Stay active off his back, attack. He has a very good transition game. Make Bektic work hard, get back to his feet, and just generally speaking, make that scenario, that aspect of Bektic's offense less potent. Now, when Ige, who, again, very good grappler, he took on Kevin Aguilar, a very good striker, and he held his own. And not only that, he won that fight. He went toe-to-toe with Aguilar. He hurt him. He bloodied him up. He outworked him in most situations, and ultimately got the better of him in everywhere that fight went. And, he has decent pop in his hands. He works at a better overall rate than Bektic does. And I would say he's a better technical striker. Now, in this matchup, Bektic could absolutely take him down and grind him out for at least 2 rounds and win a decision in this fight. He could absolutely do that, no questions asked. But what I like here is I like Bektic getting on a couple takedowns, maybe land 1 or 2 of them, but Ige to defend, get back to his feet, and start defending them. And then Ige starts to land those strikes, turn this into a brawl, turn this into the type of fight that has not been a good situation for Bektic, who is developing more and more as a bit of a front runner, that type of guy who, when he's dominant and in control, he looks fantastic. When it's close, he is not nearly the same fighter. And we'll see that in this matchup as Ige. If that's the case, this is a tough fight for both men. And if that's the case for Bektic, Ige's going to make this a war. He's going to go at him. He's going to land big strikes. It's very interesting to see that Ige started off as a slight favorite, has now moved for the dog. We've got a lot of public money on him, our opening money on him, and I like that aspect of it here. I think what we're going to see is Ige forces him to stand, lands more strikes, hurts him, tests his durability, and just does more damage, does more work overall. And my prediction is Dan Ige to defeat Mirsad Bektic by decision. In the UFC's heavyweight division, Juan, the Kraken Adams, 5 wins and a pair of defeats, takes on bad man Justin Tafa with a record of 3 wins and a single loss. Tafa coming out of New Zealand, and that part of the world, New Zealand, Australia, and such, is a hotbed for MMA right now. We'll see if Tafa can capitalize on that. Now, Adams is coming off back-to-back losses, the first 2 defeats of his career, most recently getting TKO by Greg Hardy. He's just 5-2 overall, 1-2 in the UFC, so it's a big fight for him. For Tafa, he lost his debut via clean knockout. He was at home when he did that. 3-1 overall. Not sure why these 2 guys are on the main card. It just doesn't seem like a great fight, but hey, it is what it is. Physically, Adams is a big man, 6'5", 5 inches taller than Tafa, with a 6-inch reach advantage. Both guys are at the heavyweight limit. I would say Juan is the bigger man, but Tafa is still a very large man in his own right as far as weight is concerned. Tafa is the younger man by a year. Now, this fight arguably is a striker versus a wrestler. Adams the wrestler, Tafa the kickboxer, want to keep it standing. Adams wants it on the mat. Now, prior to his UFC debut, Tafa's 3 combined opponents were just 4-6, 2 winless fighters, and not overly impressive. 3 finishes overall, 2 in the round 2, 1 very quickly in round 1. So not a great performance. No, not a great level of competition for him. But he was 20-5 in kickboxing, so he had another MMA or combat background to build on. He's got decent hands, he will brawl, and he's surprisingly accurate with his striking. He's also had some success incorporating takedowns, which should not be an option here against the superior wrestler. Now, when he fought Castro, he's having success early, landing some strikes, backing him up, but he got smashed and badly knocked out in a quick exchange along the cage, KO'd brutally. And I wonder if that makes him a little gun-shy here, and certainly facing a very different opponent in this matchup. Now, Juan Adams, he's coming off a fight where he rushed in looking for a takedown, lashed onto a single leg against Greg Hardy. Hardy sprawled out of it and just started landing concussive blows to the back of the head until the referee was forced to stop the fight. A little bit controversial, but you see why he stopped it. I had Adams in that fight, and I thought Hardy deserved the win, no questions asked. Now, he found success in his debut fight with a pair of takedowns and working combination with clinch and just a grinding effect against not a great UFC caliber fighter, but still he grounded out. He lost his other matchup against a superior wrestler, was able to take him down. Now, in his... when he fought Bular in the second fight, he outlanded him 81-41, but he gave up 2 takedowns and lost a close decision. A lot of people did not think Adams lost that fight. I had Bular to win that matchup, and it just wasn't a great performance on either side of the cage, but, I think there's a question mark if Adams going to be a little bit gun-shy here, pushing the pace, engaging Tafa, if he's at risk of getting knocked out. But the same thing could be said for Tafa, as he got knocked out by who's considered to be a lesser striker in his last fight. Got brutally knocked out, and Adams could do the same thing. Heavyweight, all it takes is one punch. One thing to keep in mind here, Tafa's never faced a wrestler like Adams before who is considerably bigger than he is and should be able to utilize that size in close to clinch him and control him and drag him into deeper waters or put him on the ground and just absolutely dominate him in that position. Tafa fighting outside of his regular area, fighting in the oceanic territories, that also is a major concern. His first MMA fight in the United States could be an issue. I didn't get a chance to look at his kickboxing record, so let me know in the comments if he's fought in the United States before. Nonetheless, it's still fighting the UFC away from home can be a very big distraction. On pay-per-view, nonetheless, can also be a big issue. Look for Adams here to close the gap, press Tafa into the cage, tie him up, and eventually drag him down to the ground where he should have an advantage. I would expect he'll be able to work, top position, put a lot of body pressure on him, eventually ground and pound him. And my prediction is Juan Adams to defeat Justin Tafa by TKO. Moving now to the co-main event of the evening, we're in the women's flyweight division as the long-running champion, the only champion this division's ever known. Actually, that's incorrect. My apologies. The only legitimate defending champion this division has ever known. Let's correct myself. Valentina Bullet Shevchenko, 17-3-0 out of Kurdistan, takes on the number one ranked blonde fighter, Katlyn Chookagian, with a current record of 12 wins and 2 losses. Now, Shevchenko has looked pretty damn strong against everyone, but it even had her moments against the women's GOAT, Amanda Nunes. She's 0-2 in those 2 fights. I would think at some point they might fight again, but we'll see. Coming off a win over Carmouche, where she dominated over 5 rounds, abruptly knocked out Jessica Ai, took out Ewell to capture the title. She has looked damn impressive. For Chookagian, she beat Maya and JoJo Calderwood in close decisions. She lost to Carmouche. She lost to Jessica Ai in her most recent losses, both by splits, actually, close fights. Both those matchups were actually 135 pounds. Chookagian, I think the one was actually at 125 against Ai. What I was referring to is both guys fighters formerly fought at 135 pounds. They're not small for 125 by any stretch of the imagination. Chook is actually 5 inches taller, so with a 2-inch reach advantage, they are the same age. Now, it's a tale of two paths. When you look at Shevchenko, she has been almost untouchable, either finishing or dominating her opposition. For Chookagian, she's gone the distance in all of her UFC fights, and almost all of them have been relatively unsure when they go to the scorecards. She's lost rounds in almost all of her fights. They have been close. Split decisions, controversial decisions, you name it, it's happened. Other than finishes. Now, Chook is a strong-willed fighter. She's willing to engage. She's almost 100% striking-based. She will clinch, but she has 0 takedowns in her UFC repertoire, so that's something to keep in mind here. She uses a lot of movement. She's in and out, lateral movement, back and forth, and she ki-eyes. She likes to emphasize her offense by really, firing out lots of noise to both emphasize her offense. It helps with her breathing and her rhythm and timing, and also it might sway the judges a little bit to make her strikes look more significant or sound more significant. She's sold as a volume-based striker, but her volume strikes landed versus her strikes thrown are not the same. She's a decent jab. And she's been sitting down her strikes a little bit more often, but she throws a lot of short punches that just don't connect. She's a 32% striking accuracy rate. She surpassed the 100 strike mark just one time in her career. Moreover, she's given up more strikes in 4 straight fights prior to the Maya victory. And when you look at those, it was an average difference of 16.25 strikes per fight that she's lost by. So, that's why things have been so close. She's also gave up a takedown at least one takedown in 3 of those 4 fights, and 6 of her 8 UFC bouts she's been taken down at least once in. All concerning things here. Now, Shevchenko, she is a volume striker. It's not going to melt your face the way she's going to be able to pour it on you, but she should have the edge and variety as she incorporates a lot more kicks, and her power is a big factor here as well. Her accuracy striking, almost 50%. That's a huge factor here, and it makes her the more efficient worker, which should hold up over 5 rounds. And she should be able to win this fight on the feet, as you would expect. But with Shevchenko, as most good champions do, she has layers. The key for her, actually, in this fight will be the clinch and the takedown. Chookagian can be stalled out in the clinch, and she has struggled when her opponents look to take her down. Carmouche beat her because she orchestrated a ground-based attack. Calderwood took her down 3 times with a lot of success. Alexis Davis took her down on the ground, I believe in the second round, dominated her in that position, and was able to take that round. Didn't return to it in the 3rd round and lost a decision as a result. Shev is good from top position with both ground and pound and her submission game. If Shevchenko is struggling for any stretch of the imagination, or the fight's even close, especially because of the movement and the reach, look for Shevchenko to close the distance quickly. She will not be backed off by the lack of power that Chookagian offers. She'll be able to close in, clinch up, get her on the ground. Chookagian's simply not active enough, and it's not that she's not active, she's not impactful enough. Shev is going to take her down in this fight. She's going to rough her up on the mat, do more damage. Chookagian's a tough kid. She's going to put up a good fight. She'll hang in there, but my prediction is Valentina Shevchenko to defeat Katlyn Chookagian by decision. Finally, now we move to the main event of the evening, and we are in the UFC's light heavyweight division. This is the light heavyweight GOAT. one of the greatest of all time, Johnny Bones Jones, the controversial Johnny Bones Jones, 24-1-0 with one no contest, takes on the undefeated number 4 ranked Devastator Dominick Reyes, 11-0. And again, I don't trust those records. I should double check them. Nonetheless, Jones is functionally undefeated. Let's be clear with that. The beating he took at the hands of Matt Hamill should not count on his record, and that's what it comes down to, even though it was, questionable illegal strikes. He has back-to-back title defenses of his new title reign versus Anthony Lionheart-Smith and Thiago Santos after beating Alexander Gustafsson in dominant fashion to recapture the title. Santos put together a solid performance, most recently against Jones, going to split and forcing Jones to a position where he actually lost multiple rounds. For Reyes, undefeated. 6-0 in the UFC, knocked out former middleweight champion Chris Weidman in under 2 minutes. Split decision versus Volkan Ozdemir in arguably his toughest fight to date. Now, physically, both fighters are 6'4". Jones will have a massive reach, 7-inch reach advantage, 84 inches overall, and Jones is the older fighter by 2 years than when compared to Reyes. Now, Reyes represents the next wave of light heavyweight, but included in that wave are guys like Johnny Walker and Alexander Rakic, who both recently lost definitive fights. Difficult fights, and if Jones is able to defeat Reyes here, it's almost like he'll have temporarily survived that next wave with other guys needing to rebuild themselves, and he could be in line to face the winner of the Corey Anderson-Jan Blachowicz fight, or possibly Volkan Ozdemir, somebody that, guys have already had close opportunities and just are more mature fighters than they were in the previous. Nonetheless, it'd be very interesting to see who comes up next. Now, when you look at Dominick Reyes, what are his strengths? Well, he absolutely fucking hits hard. He hits like a tank. He's got 7 wins by knockout, 3 in the UFC. That arguably could be his key to beating Jones. It's hard to beat Johnny Jones over a prolonged period of time. But if you can hurt him, if you can catch him, if you can knock him out, well, that's a different story. Then again, that's difficult in itself as well. Now, it's worth noting when you look at a guy like Reyes, who's going to rely on his reach and his ability to land strikes, that the reach in his recent opponents has been roughly the same as him. He's never dealt with, and very few fighters have ever dealt with a fighter who can reach you like John Jones can. So dealing with that big difference is going to be very interesting to see how Reyes overcomes it. Now, I said he has power. He struggled with the pressure of Volkan Ozdemir. I would say Reyes, type of fighter, he needs to be the bully or the aggressor, the guy who's going to move forward more frequently. And if you can back him up, he's not quite the same fighter. But again, backing him up, not as easy as you would expect it to be. Fight length for Dominick Reyes is a concern. 10 of his 12 career fights have gone down in the opening round and none further. The Volkan Ozdemir fight, which was very close, I thought he lost it. Went to a split decision, and then he had the OSP win where he eventually essentially stopped him at the end of that matchup, but he went the full 3 rounds against a guy not known for it. But the thing is, you look at those two guys, Ozdemir and OSP, neither are known for going deep into matchups and having a lot of success. Neither guy is known for having great cardio, and Reyes was just able to have better cardio on those nights and win those matchups. Johnny Bones Jones is going to have an exceptionally big edge in overall experience, in both in quality and long fight experience. He's been in 5-round fights like crazy. He's done it all, fought all these guys in long, big fights. And when you consider the fact that Reyes, outside of the second, into the third round, that's going to be uncomfortable for him. If the fight's close, going to round 4, that's unheralded territory against the best competition of his opponent. It's going to be very difficult. And then you add into that equation, Johnny Jones is able to put you in a lot of uncomfortable or bad positions because he throws such a diverse and unorthodox approach. He can wrestle, he can throw a lot of kicks, he can strike, he can clinch, he can take you down, he can submit you. He's got all these different things he can throw at you, and you're not quite sure how you're going to overcome it. Jones he offers so many different fronts, makes it very difficult for fighters with less dimensions to find success. That being said, Santos is able to outwork him at times, push the pace, fight with aggression, and just not respect John Jones and get in there and do a lot of damage. Santos likes to get in a firefight, though. He's willing to trade and create chaos, take damage, risk getting knocked out. I'm not sure Reyes is like that. I'm not sure Reyes is going to have that mindset and willingness to do that. Again, he did not look good against Volkan Ozdemir early in that match when Ozdemir was pushing forward and landing strikes. He just seemed a little bit, I don't want to call it gun-shy, but just not himself. Jones will need to utilize his reach here, keep Reyes on the outside, not allow him to deploy that offense, keep his power a non-factor. Once Reyes starts to push forward, Jones can jam him up in the clinch, take him down if needed. Now, Reyes is dangerous, absolutely, arguably one of the more dangerous fighters he's faced, but I would say the experience against... But it could be argued that Santos was actually more dangerous than Dominick Reyes, had more tools to hurt you with. But I think the overall window for Reyes being dangerous starts to close as the fight advances. Again, he did hurt OSP late in that matchup, so again, you could make that argument, but OSP and John Jones not the same. If Jones starts to grind on him, look for Reyes to slow down, look for him to get tired, start breathing a little bit heavy, be a little less aggressive. Those two fights going that long are huge experience opportunities for Reyes, but this is a whole other animal here. And at some point, Jon Jones is going to lose. And it could be Reyes. It could be Reyes catches him and puts him down. But Jones is so methodical. Look for him to just, fight this fight at his pace, make you do his thing. Use those range weapons, use those lower half kicks to really back Reyes up and take some of his motion out of it. That jab, keep that hand in his face as he likes to do. Limit Reyes' overall openings. Reyes will start to slow down. He will go more into a defensive mode for the later stages of that fight and allow Jon Jones to really dictate where he goes. Reyes might win a round early. He might have some success. He might even hurt Jon Jones. That's quite a possibility. But I think he just won't do enough over the duration of the fight to be declared the winner. Jones just throws too much variety and is better defensively. He's able to limit the offense, and I don't think Reyes is going to hold up well into rounds 3, 4, and 5 against a fighter like Jon Jones. And my prediction is Jon Jones to defeat Dominick Reyes by decision. So those are my main card predictions for UFC 247. All my preliminary picks, as per usual, will be available at kamikazeoverdrive.net. The bet packs, which have been very successful of late, returning profit on multiple consecutive events and multiple events over the last few. All those results, again, can be seen on my main page on my website at kamikazeoverdrive.net. The bet packs will be for sale, just $15 for both. You get the hardcore and the casual betting cluster, depending on your style. Fantasy draft picks, all kinds of other things in there as well. Follow me on Twitter at KO_predictions. You can follow me on Facebook. Click and subscribe for YouTube notifications to let you know when I post videos. And generally speaking, I greatly appreciate you tuning in. Leave comments, like the video, whatever else you want to do to let me know that you like my shit, don't like my shit, whatever you want to say. But again, thank you so much for tuning in. And I guess we'll see you after the bell. Take care, guys. Hi.